Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Katie Bornflath. I represent Tech Connect, and today's session looks at a question many cities are actively working through. What does it actually take to modernize how a city serves its residents? We're going to walk through a real-world example from the city of Midland, Texas, where they've deployed an AI-powered civic concierge named Jacky. This is to help manage overflow calls, support multiple languages, and provide 24/7 access to city services without compromising security or trust. And I'm very, very excited to introduce my panelists who are joining me today. Dr. Stephen Sierra Alcabes, and I know I butchered that, but he's the process engineer officer with the city of Midland, and Briggs Kellogg from ElevenLabs, who partnered with Midland on this deployment. We're going to walk through what led to this decision, how it was implemented, and what the results look like thus far. We have reserved 15 to 20 minutes at the end, so if you all came with questions, fantastic. Or if they come up during the webinar, great. I just want to ensure that you put them in your control panel. There is a little question box there prior to that time so that we can get them queued up and we will answer as many as possible. Before we get started into our discussion today, though, I would love to hand the mic over to Briggs. He's going to kick us off. Briggs?
Awesome. Yeah. Hi. I'm so happy to be here. And I just basically want to quickly run through who ElevenLabs is, who we're working with, and also Midland and the work that we've done with them, and then go from there. And so ElevenLabs is a research and product company. So we are a company building the voices that are behind a lot of the things that you're seeing out there nowadays. And we're working with some of the best and brightest companies and municipalities in what they're doing. And we have been so fortunate to be able to work with Midland specifically, who really is doing what they can to be on the cutting edge of everything that of this AI era. And it's really exciting because we're building the technology that exists behind the scenes, meaning like the voices and how they sound, and then also how they're able to interact with the user and also perform actions on behalf of the user. And it's really a new era of how you are going to be able to interact with computers, but also by extension, how you're going to be able to interact with agencies, organizations, municipalities, and companies. And it's a really exciting time. And so, yeah, I'm super happy to be here. And before we get into it, I want to touch a little bit on, like, I guess, what we've been doing so far in the government space, what we've seen, which is like really deterministic flows. Like everything in the government space is built around taking something that's like abstract, like and by abstract I mean it could be like, I need a new trash can, or I need to pay my bills, or I need to pay my utilities, or I need to fill out this form to get this permit, or whatever it might be. And they might have a ton of different reasons behind it, but they have some sort of end goal in mind. And then we're kind of just trying to put them down a funnel. We're saying like, all right, here's an IVR. You're going to press 1, press 3, press 2, and we're going to hopefully get you to the right place. And then, we're working with, and like, but what we're seeing is essentially like this change where people are able to launch agents, and these agents have non-determinism built in. So they can say, hey, like, I am starting a company and I don't even know where to begin. It's like, okay, well, great. Like, let me help you walk through how to do that with our state or with our city, or how to get this permit, or what do I need to have a chicken coop in my backyard, whatever it might be. And these AI agents are able to help the consumer, or the, I guess I should say, in this case, the constituent, where they're able to interact with the government and get what they need done, essentially, and get help along the way. And the great part about this is that it's able to not only like inform them and help them, but also resolve things on their behalf. It's able to actually perform actions, help them fill out a form, help them pay their utility bill, help you navigate the government's website. So what we're seeing is that like there's just a ton of uh enormous costs that come in with like administrative work. And ultimately the reason why people have bad experiences with government is because we're not wanting to spend taxpayer dollars on administrative bureaucracy. We're just wanting to help them fill out X form. And every new employee, every new government worker and like is really putting a burden on the taxpayer that may not be inside or outside of a given budget. And then on top of that, you're having to train that individual. You're having to think about the scalability. How many calls is that person able to handle a day? And when you start thinking about AI, you're able to have like an infinitely scalable solution, something that's able to take a you're able to take some sort of problem or thing that you're wanting to help people with, like being able to pay their utility bills or fill out some form. And then you're able to have something that can handle hundreds of calls at once with just one agent, or it can scale down to only handling one call at a time. And you don't have to worry about people that are just standing around and doing nothing and filling people's time. On top of that, you don't have to worry about retraining people and all that. You're just able to think about, what do my constituents need? How can we lower the burden of administrative costs? And how do I have something that's scalable for them? And what we're seeing is that a huge decrease in how much time it takes to get things resolved, how much time it takes for people to feel satisfied and get like the result that they want out of engaging with their government. And yeah, it's been awesome. And I love this quote at the bottom, which is, we're not just cutting costs, we're creating a better, faster experience for our customers. And you might as well here just replace customers with constituents, which is like, we just want to create a better experience that people feel like their taxpayer money is going to something that's actually valuable for them. And that's really our hope. That's like ElevenLabs' hope. And why Midland is such a great example is because they're sitting on the edge of like, how can we just be as useful as possible to our constituents? And that's what we want to do and want to help with. And we're working with both domestic and international organizations. So, we're working with Ukraine. We're helping them with really redefining how they work with their citizens and how they're interacting with the government. And it's really cool because they've been able to launch things on the education side, on the public service side, and they've been able to do a ton of different things where basically anywhere where action is needed to be performed on behalf of a citizen, there's probably a place for an agent inside of that flow. And I think on a broader scale, a lot of people get really scared about agents because they think about the jobs that might be lost along the way. And I think those are all really rational things to think about. But when you're thinking about constituents and governments, you're just thinking about, how can I save my taxpayers money, and how can I like make sure that their money is going to things that they find valuable. And that's what we're also seeing with like the Czech Republic that we've been working with, and where they've been handling thousands of calls a day. They're able to handle hundreds of hours of conversations per day, and they're able to deflect a lot. And that's a really important metric here, is they're able to deflect like essentially like the only time a human is intervening is when if it's a high value like or a high complexity conversation, meaning you can focus on having servants working on things that are actually difficult to solve versus just handling minutia over and over and over again. And so what I want to do is I want to show like a little demo of an existing agent that exists out there for a state agency, and kind of show the experience and what it's like. It's probably not going to be great, and that's sort of the point. And then I'm going to be tossing it over to Steven, in which he's going to show Jacky, which is their AI agent that they've launched on their website that helps people navigate their website, helps them pay their bills, helps them fill out forms, helps them do whatever they need, but informs them and acts on their behalf. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show what this is like on a current website, government website that exists. So I'm going to start it.
Hi, I'm Robin, your Benefits Cal virtual assistant. I can help you see if you qualify for benefits or answer questions about Benefits Cal. If at any point you want to go back to the beginning of this chat, type or say start over. What can I help you with today?
Yeah, I'm wondering how I could apply for benefits. And it's just completely frozen. And so it's starting to loop. So it heard what I said, but it just keeps on doing hi, I'm Robin, hi, I'm Robin, hi, I'm Robin, over and over again. Not a great experience. And really, we're gonna get into the why today. That's what I want to really make sure that we get into. But it's like I think the why is somewhat obvious, especially when you think about like senior citizens and disabled people, where it's like some people rely on these features to like actually get what they need. Some people's like lives are in your hands when you're trying, whenever you're thinking about benefits, and making sure that these things work is really, really important. And that's what we're trying to do. And so I'm going to toss it over to Steven to essentially show what Jacky is able to do. Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Briggs, and thank you, Katie. So I'll just jump straight in first and go ahead and give Jacky a quick call.
Please hold while I try to connect you. Hello, I'm Jacky, your real-time AI assistant for all things Midland. Although I'm not human, I can answer questions and provide information on just about anything related to City of Midland services.
Hey, Jacky, I have a pretty serious issue here. So I just received a very confusing water bill that I'm unable to understand, and I'm wondering if you could help direct me to the right person.
I can connect you directly to utility billing to help you understand and resolve the issue with your water bill. Would you like me to transfer you now?
Yes, please. I would really love that.
Connecting you to utility billing. Please hold.
And that's an example. I mean, and there's other examples that we could do. I mean, I'll do one more just so that you can see a variation.
Hello, I'm Jacky, your real-time AI assistant for all things Midland. Although I'm not human, I can answer questions and provide information on just about anything related to City of Midland services.
Hey, Jacky, I really want a puppy. Could you help me understand how to adopt an animal here in the city?
Sure. In Midland, you can adopt a pet from the Midland Animal Shelter. They offer a variety of animals looking for new homes. You can visit them in person to meet the animals and speak with the staff about the adoption process, which includes filling out an application and possibly paying an adoption fee. The shelter also often hosts adoption events where the fees might be reduced. Would you like the contact information or address for the Midland Animal Shelter?
No, I had another question in mind. How do I become a vendor with the city?
To become a vendor with the City of Midland, you'll need to register through our vendor portal. The process involves submitting your company information, such as legal name, address, and contact details, along with additional.
And you get the idea. The whole point of essentially having three little mini scenarios is just to lend to the visualization that it's not a one-trick pony, right? I mean, it's not. Jacky is not an agent in our case, Jacky, right? In Briggs' case, it's the ElevenLabs technology suite. But with us, our goal was really to make Jacky a real-time concierge for our citizens. And as Briggs well noted earlier, at the end of the day, it's really not about the technical aspects. It's more about the human experience and the person behind the other end of the line who it could be, in a rush, not have a lot of time on their hands, and they're short on patience, and they want answers and they want answers now. And instead of getting routed from one customer service rep to a different customer service rep to a different one, um, Jacky's able to answer and source questions that really do free up the time for our customer service reps to then handle the more complex cases. And so instead of reducing the workforce, what we're seeing is that we are enhancing the experience of uh, our existing workforce, but also the experience of our constituents, that being our residents. So Katie, did you want to go ahead and kick off? I know that you had a couple of questions in mind, and
Oh, I have lots of questions for you all. That was a fantastic example. Very, very, very obvious differences with those two examples. So well done. I want to get into. I'm going to call you Dr. Stevens, just so I can save your last name, Dr.
no
Stevens.
worries.
Rather,
You just say Steven. It's fine.
Stephen. All right. So let's start with the problem that everybody's trying to solve. Pre-Jacky, what did the call experience actually, what did it look like for residents, and what was breaking down? What was going on there?
Um, I would say that the breakdown that we were having, and this was, and it's all a process, right? But it wasn't resolved just with Jacky. Part of it is also ensuring that, number one, individuals across the organization all understand what the right information is for what kinds of situations. And so by that, what I mean to say is, um, in our case, we were having a lot of siloed communication, which lended itself to, if, let's say, somebody was calling utility billing and they had a question on utility billing, then of course they would get the answer that they need. But if they had a question on something else that was very general, but it wasn't specific to utility billing, unless that customer service rep had already sourced those kinds of calls many times before and had committed that to heart, essentially, what ended up happening is that that person would get transferred to another person. And if that person that they got transferred to didn't know the information, they got transferred to yet another person. And that created a lot of frustration. And so just a lot of siloed communication, and just a frustration as well with the employees of having to source so many calls that were very basic in nature. And so one of the really wonderful things about having Jacky is that you feed the system essentially all of the information that is pertinent to all of these very generalist type questions that somebody might have. And it doesn't matter which of the 11 call centers that the individual reaches out to. If the call becomes a, or is about to become missed call for the city, then it gets routed to Jacky. So we haven't put it to the point to where it goes directly to Jacky. Right now, we are in a transitionary phase. So this isn't something that we just jumped all in across the entire phone tree and having Jacky replacing that that call center individual who's answering the phone immediately. It's being reserved for the calls that would have either been missed or that would have been diverted. And so in that sense, it's been really helpful.
Okay. So just out of curiosity, when this was all happening, all the silos and what you just all stated, was AI your first thought for a fix?
No, no. And actually, the city, thankfully, very much since before I even got here, the city was being very forward-looking with how they were going about solving this issue. And one of the things that that the city did before I even arrived was essentially establish scripts of sorts to hand out to customer service reps across the organization. And we also had it on just knowledge-based documents on like our SharePoint. And that would be something that anybody, if it didn't matter whether you were a customer service rep or not, if you received a phone call, the expectation is that you take the time to go through the material and don't just bounce the person around. And at the end of the day, it's considering, What if this was my grandparent, right? I would want my grandfather, my grandmother to not be tossed around and to not feel like they had their time wasted. And so when you think about individuals who are more on the vulnerable side, um, it, just having that consideration goes a long way. And so I can't take credit for that piece. That piece was already being done before I arrived, and I was blessed to arrive to a city that was already being very forward looking.
That's amazing. I want to go back one more time. Do you know in your what you know about everything? They were already planning all this. Was there a moment or a specific incident, or was it that was like, yeah, we got to come up with a new approach, or was it just a building, and before the levee breaks, let's do something? Or was there something that said, okay, was there one moment that the city was like, let's do this?
I don't believe so. I think it was a cumulative effect of over the years, just individuals, rightfully so, expressing concern and frustration with calling the city and not feeling like their answers were, or their questions were answered at all, or that to get an answer that they would have to be tossed around from one department to another.
Right.
And so the city initially, before Jacky 2.0, because we call our agent Jacky, but for us internally it's Jacky 2.0, and we had a Jacky 1.0, which essentially was a chatbot, and it was a very basic one that got good information, but it wasn't as contextually aware, and it, it lacked a bit of the human touch and I know it sounds kind of weird even saying human touch when we're talking about an AI agent, but I think that what you were able to hear there, I mean, was an agent that even has the capability to sound empathetic. So it does add an element of human touch to it. But the city had implemented a a very basic chatbot, and kind of the evolution of how Jacky came to be, or the idea was, I was at a Smart Cities Connect conference in San Antonio, and that was just last year. And in that conference, I had the opportunity to chat with the folks from Dell who do a tremendous job and cutting edge technology. And they were showing off this demo that was a partnership between Dell, NVIDIA, and the company Unique. And Unique is another company out there that also provides AI personas. They're more in the avatar business. But what they had in combination there, at least at the booth at the time that they showed it, was something that to me just blew my mind. You know, I was there speaking to what seemed to be like another person at a booth, very hyper realistic. And I was wowed. I was like, okay, how can we get this to our city? And I spent the weekend after the conference just really thinking hard, how do I make this sales pitch to our city management team? And I finally came to the realization that I can't, because it's too expensive for our budget. And without getting into the exact details, but the kind of expenditure required for that kind of investment, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's because it requires infrastructure to do on-prem services and things like that. And so um, I then started thinking quickly, okay, then what? Are there other companies out there that can provide the whole thing, the whole enchilada together, or can I piecemeal this somehow and make something out of, you know, emerging technologies? And that piece right there, that emerging technologies part, what was was what led me to ElevenLabs. Just doing research, I was able to quickly find ElevenLabs, and I essentially put them to the test against all the competitors that were there at the time. I mean, now there's more out there, and I'm sure they're going to keep popping up.
Mhm.
But ElevenLabs at that time really did seem like the only one that had the features that they had. And as time has progressed, I mean, they've only but very aggressively added on to their existing features and solidified their product. And so, without sounding too much like a fanboy, I mean, the reality is that in that regard, from a technology perspective, they are in the bleeding edge of technology when it comes to voice synthesis. But going back to how Jacky 2.0 came to be is, once I identified ElevenLabs, I initially paid out of pocket just myself. Like I didn't even ask the city for any of its money. I told myself, you know what, before I even ask the city to potentially invest in something, I want to see how this works, like firsthand. And I tested it so much and had so much fun. And finally was able to showcase a really neat demo to our city management team, and they were all very much impressed by it. And I was given the green light to very carefully, uh, essentially, make it into a reality.
I'm so impressed. You were your own test dummy. That's amazing. Good call there. So I want to. You answered like every other question I was going to.
I'm so sorry.
On every question, no, just the next few. Thank you. No, that was fantastic. I do want to talk about. So you did the demo. That's how you found out it was going to work. Let's bring it to life a little bit and talk about. I mean, we saw how she sounds authentic. Like she sounds like a human in comparison to demo one. Thank you for that, Briggs. So let's we saw how she worked, but how does it if residents call during peak call times or after hours, and is it just how does it work? How does that function just for our audience to get a
So
better
what would
understanding?
Absolutely. So what would happen there, and Briggs, you can step in at any moment to correct me if I say something that sounds kind of off, but to the best of my knowledge and based on the contractual language, is that in our tier, there's a specific amount of concurrent calls that an agent can handle at any time. And then you have there's this feature called call bursting, which allows you to go over that concurrency limit. But essentially, you're able to scale as need be. But if you want to stay within known cost, then as long as it stays within that concurrency limit for your respective tier, then you're good to go. And so it's let's say 10 people decided to call simultaneously Jacky's direct phone number, they're all going to be able to get a unique instance of Jacky that's going to be able to answer questions to those 10 individuals simultaneously. Briggs, did I speak to that correctly?
Yeah, certainly. I know. I think, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well done, Stephen. So Briggs, from your side, how was it designed to feel so natural?
Well, I mean, a lot of the praise goes to our amazing research team, or all the praise should go to our amazing research team. I mean, we built the technology back in, like the first iteration of the technology back in like 2022, 2023 time, and then we've just been progressing it ever since. And so the technology itself is ultimately using AI models to be able to generate the speech. And so it's seeing what text needs to be read out. And then it's able to use like semantics and contextual analysis to say, like, okay, like this sentence needs to be like something that's like said more excited, or something that needs to be said more just like neutral and flat, or something that needs to be said with a level of empathy. And so the emotion is actually built in at the model level by like understanding what's happening in the conversation, understanding what needs to be said, what needs to be conveyed to the end person. And then it's able to pattern match that to like what it knows about tons of audio data, millions of hours of audio data, and being able to say like, okay, like this individual needs something that sounds empathetic, or something that sounds more excited and glee. And so I'm going to look at all these calls and see how someone normal talks, right? And they might put intonation in the way that they speak. They may raise their voice up and down, or they may talk more quietly or talk louder. And based on that, we're able to generate a voice that is able to sound natural. And really, that's just like what we realized with time was that that's just like the first barrier. Like, we started more on the creative side of things, of people being able to use our models to generate dubbing, or generate audiobooks, or whatever it might be. And what we realize is like, oh, people are willing to talk to something that sounds like it wants to help them, and maybe it can help them. And ultimately, it was a matter of just building that back end technology of like, can it actually help them? Can we make it so that like once it it can understand the emotion and the semantics and like what's happening, so it can understand what needs to actually be performed for the end user. And so ultimately, that's like our agents platform is just bringing all those pieces together and showing them what's like, and we're able to show kind of the peak of what's possible in the modern AI era.
Okay. All right. Well done. All right. So you made the decision. Excuse me, Stephen, you tested it yourself. You brought it to city leaders, right? To sell to them. How long did it take from that point for it to go live?
If I'm not mistaken, we started using ElevenLabs, I believe it was around May, without a contract. Then we entered contract with ElevenLabs, believe it was October, November of this last year. And so as far as like from the moment of contract approval to releasing live was just a matter of weeks.
Oh, wow.
But that was really just kind of the adding some final touches to Jacky. But before then, it was really the months leading to. And from a technology perspective, I mean, you can push an agent on a website within a matter of less than a few minutes. But if you're deploying an agent at scale for a city, it's not just about clicking a few buttons. There's some legitimate work that has to go, before you publish anything. And one of the very first things, it's really understanding what are the processes and what are the answers to all these commonly asked questions. And so if you have SOPs on hand, then these are things that are quite simple to handle. If you're working to develop SOPs, then it's something that takes time to be able to first churn through that process of developing those SOPs so that you can have a framework of shared understanding. And that's essentially what we did. We were still in the process of developing some of our SOPs and ensuring that they were not only collected internally, but also shared amongst other stakeholders internally across our organization, so that we could all speak the same language, we all understood the same information. So before we fed anything to our AI agent, it's ensuring that our folks at a human level understand as well what's going on, what's the intent, and then you add the capability that the AI agent adds to the operations. Without it, I mean, you're essentially then planning to fail at scale. I mean, it's that concept of, you know, quality in, quality out, garbage in, garbage out.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I want to add to that where it's like, you know, we've worked with a wide range of municipalities. Some have like the fastest launch I've ever seen is like 11 days, which is like wild. And then a few weeks, a few months and longer, you know, we're doing complex RFPs with like quite a few different state and local agencies. And really like, I think the biggest benefit to like working with a company that understands like I think one of the biggest benefits of ElevenLabs and I think what Midland benefited from is working with a company that understands how to work with governments and like what is needed to actually like procure something. And that's not something that's super common in the like this AI era, sadly, is that a lot of people don't like they know how to work with startups, which is like fast and loose, but like what happens in a government needs to be audit grade. It needs to be backed by data and research and science, and it needs to be backed by votes and council members and you know whoever else, and it needs to have a level of I guess, rigor to how you're procuring agents and then being able to deploy those so that you know, you want to help your constituents, but you don't, the last thing you want is to get to lose their trust. And trust is hard earned and it's lost really fast. And I think that one of the great things we've seen with Midland is just a methodical approach to how they are launching Jacky across their across all their different services that they provide as a government is where hopefully with time is that people feel completely comfortable going to their website or calling them at any time and know that they're going to get an agent, but if they really need it they're also going to get a human too. And like that's an actually ideal scenario because you don't have to worry about wait times and stuff like that. And so yeah, like ultimately I think what Midland has done is really great and a really great like of that like middle ground of being able to be scrappy while also being rigorous and like making sure that they're representing their taxpayers accordingly.
Yeah, I think two areas that come up in almost every city conversation are accessibility and trust, and you just hit on both of those things. And I know that security and privacy are obviously non-negotiable in government, right? So the evaluation process, how did that look? What gave you confidence in ElevenLabs as far as that was concerned?
I was gonna say sock two, sock two. Sorry. I think that's the minimum, you know, check the box requirement to be able to say, hey, yes, we can do business with this company as a municipal government organization. You expect the company to be SOC 2 certified. But aside from that, really, it was also working with individuals across the city that are much more intelligent than I am. At the time, I was working very closely with our city's ITSD, so our IT department. Um, I was recently adopted by them, which has been really nice, and actually have a team of
Keep going.
AI analysts with me, amazing folks,
Hey guys.
and and uh, and really it was our IT team looking at it and analyzing and our information security personnel. And so there were more details and specifics that went into it than I could speak out of memory. But what I can say with confidence is that in everything that we looked at, I mean, really there was not a single aspect of ElevenLabs offerings that gave us any kind of question as to how they use or not the information, how they protect it, all things that are really important to us. And of course, that they're not, you know, training any of their personnel or they're using other models. So it's not like they're going to train using our information for LLMs, but but how they were going to use it, if at all, our data, and it's not. I mean, it really it lives in one place essentially, and it's only accessed by the individuals with a very specific need and a right to know.
Yeah, and what I'll add on to that is that it's like we really worked hard to, like, from the very beginning of ElevenLabs, we've like remained a lot of ethical ideals. We have generated our like voices like with procured like correctly audio. We have generated our models with that. We have generated our voice, like a lot of, we pay voice actors millions of dollars a month in royalties to them for for providing their voice for the voices that you hear, even with Jacky. And so it's something that like we really cared about from the beginning, was making sure that we did everything ethically, and that ultimately went into how we're building agents as well. So we said, if we're going to build agents, we need to make sure that like data is protected and that people feel safe. And like there are individuals who are building startups and it can be really fast and loose, and they're okay with like data being more exposed and to just make things more efficient. But then there are organizations that where like data and data privacy is like it's not a it's not a soft requirement, it's the barrier entry. Like it's like we're not even going to think about this unless we know that like the end user is going to be safe. We can't even test it unless we know that the end user is going to be safe. And so we, it's something, an ideal that's existed in our company from the very beginning and is transferred into how we're also building ElevenLabs is, agents, and our agentic technology is, we're just trying to be as ethical as possible in how we're trying to approach it. We have basically every single compliance thing you can think of that allows us to work with agencies, both domestically here in the US and also globally, where we're able to work with Ukraine, the Czech Republic, and amazing governments, and help taxpayers all over the world.
Great. Thank you for that, Briggs. We're getting close to Q&A, so I want to remind the audience, I do see questions trickling in. If you have them, now's a great time to enter them into your question on your control panel for me. But I did want to touch on results in the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then I have one final question I really want to get some info out of you, Stephen. But as far as resident satisfaction, has it gone up, and how are you tracking it?
We are tracking the interactions, and we built into our into Jacky. We did it through a custom UI. ElevenLabs afterwards came up with the rating system and the ability to provide feedback. But when we were trying to develop our custom UI at the time, it wasn't a feature that was available then. And so we developed it ourselves. And essentially, if an individual clicks on, one of the 1 to 5 stars for, their rating, it doesn't just give the star number. It also takes them to a Qualtrics survey, and so they're taken to a survey where they can answer voluntarily some questions, and that provides us with a lot more qualitative data that in turn we can use to modify Jacky as need be.
Okay. And I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to roll on into Q&A and get our audience engaged here. But now that you've gone through the process and you know all the things, what would you tell your other cities that are considering something similar, and what should they look for in their next partner?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great question. I would say start with the very basics. Don't jump right into a technology if you don't even understand your processes. If you're jumping into a technology for the sake of just purchasing what's new, what's out there, to be able to tell council we're the latest and greatest and we're doing the best out there, we're at the cutting edge, you're gonna take 2 steps forward and then fall flat on your face. And so what I would say is make sure that you understand your organization's processes, make sure that your knowledge base, whatever that knowledge base repository is, that it's as up to date as possible, so that as you build your agent, if you decide to go down that route, you're able to do so in a way that leads to desired results instead of unexpected surprises and a ton of calls with people telling you, hey, this is feeding the wrong information. And then you're just actually spending more time having to, you know, have individuals explaining what the right information is. From a procurement standpoint, which is really important for municipal organizations, I would say to not just understand the contract, um, but to also be willing to um, enter into negotiations. I think that sometimes some municipal organizations can get into a bit of a gridlock when it comes to certain contracts, and with new technology companies that are emerging, there's certain quirks that are out there that unfortunately, if you're a municipal organization expecting the same exact kind of verbiage that you'll see from a much larger Fortune 500 company, you're going to be mistaken. I mean, that's just something to keep in mind. And then more importantly, working with all of your respective stakeholders. I mentioned earlier that I was able to really capitalize on the intelligence and the amazingness of other people around me across the organization who really did help to bring Jacky to life as well. And even after we've deployed Jacky, we still continue to make modifications. It's a work in progress, right? There is no such thing as a perfect technology. And so as time goes on, understand that just because you released something, that's not the end of it. You know, keep adding improvements to it, keep making sure that things are working the way that you're expecting them to work, and don't just let it be some passion project that dies off and then people don't even care about afterwards.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Stephen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now's the time for you to shine here. Let's get into some Q&A, and you guys grab them as you see fit, Briggs and Stephen. Dan is asking, how do you set up the content that Jacky uses for her responses, and how do you keep that content updated?
Absolutely. So when you log into the ElevenLabs platform, what you'll see is in the agents section, you'll be able to see knowledge base. And ElevenLabs has actually set up now a few different ways for an agent to retrieve knowledge. So there's a main knowledge base repository for the agent. And what that does is that for just about every question that an individual poses the agent, it performs a RAG indexing to retrieve information as need be. However, there's another way now that's called through a workflow, in which, unless the information is specifically needed, it allows the agent to essentially bypass that. It keeps it in storage always, but it reduces the cost and it reduces the latency associated with retrieving that information. And so what you get is a lower cost call at the end of the day, and hopefully as well, a little bit lower latency. But it all lives within the platform, and you can upload it, whether it's a PDF, as a Word document. You can copy and paste it. I mean, it's very simple in that regard to be able to upload your knowledge-based documentation. As far as the updating of it, I mean, you delete the one that you have present, and then you upload the new one. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I'll add in there where it's like, it's really one of the thing, it's changing the mindset in how you're actually working, which is like with living information. Like if you're going to have living documentation that exists around your municipality, and you want to ensure that everybody's on the same page, that as things change and as protocol changes or as forms change or as new laws are enacted, that there is like a single source of truth that exists somewhere, and that needs to be designated and then agreed upon by all departments and everybody that's involved in the project, by saying like, hey, like this is going to be where all of our living information exists, and we agree as like an organization to delete things that aren't accurate anymore, to update things that need to be revised, to add things that are new, and to ensure that there's a good workflow that exists around that. Of course, if you're working with someone like ElevenLabs, we can walk you through some of that, like some standard operating procedures there, and like the best way to make that happen. But it is a culture shift in some ways. Like it's not going to be automatic where like all of a sudden like where all of a sudden it's just you have things that are always up to date. Instead, it's going to be like, okay, what we're trying to do is prop up a larger like agent that's able to help our constituents with a wide variety of things, and we need to make sure that they're always getting the right information, and we all agree in the same way that Stephen brought up how there was kind of this idea inside of Midland where it's like we want to make sure that, you know, if this was my grandmother, I wouldn't want them to just be tossed around from one person to another. You have to have a similar sort of like ethical anchor where you say like, okay, we want to make sure that there is a single source of truth because it's our duty to the individuals on the other end to make sure that they're able to get correct information at all times. And so I think what Steven said about it not just becoming like a passion project that you forget about is like really important. It's like something that you are constantly updating. And it's like, this is a vital part of how we work with our constituents is through agents like these.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Donna is curious to know how you're dealing with communicating with stakeholders who speak only Spanish or Chinese, and how is the system meeting ADA requirements?
As far as the communication directly with the stakeholders, I have not personally come across a stakeholder who's wanted to specifically discuss making any changes to Jacky. However, Jacky does have the ability to speak in Midland's 5 most predominantly used languages, those being English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, and Chinese Mandarin. And so, if we were to have an individual that only spoke that language, then we would either using a cell phone live translate or calling a service to be able to communicate at the moment and at the time being. I mean, we could even use realistically, we could even use ElevenLabs at the you know at that specific time and place. There's different means to that. And then as far as the ADA compliance, I would have to understand what specific part of ADA compliance are we really speaking to? I mean, are we talking about ADA compliance as it pertains to the contrast of the letters and the UI against the background of the website? Are we talking about ADA requirements as far as like the speed of the speech itself to ensure that individuals can understand what Jacky is articulating? I can speak to the specifics of, but just in general, I guess I could say that we essentially have a checklist, and we go down the checklist and we try to ensure to the best of our ability that we are meeting such requirements, of course.
Thank you, Stephen. How were the responsibilities split between Midland and ElevenLabs during implementation?
Grace,
Oh,
you can.
yeah, I mean, I'll jump in where it's a great question. I mean, really, we're like for Midland specifically, you know, Steven and his team were so well enabled internally, and you know, and I would say like scrappy in a good way, and were able to build things and be like really self-enabled. And that was a joy to work with, ultimately, is where we felt like we were experts that were able to help them and guide them through the process as they had questions. But it was more ad hoc in how we were engaging with them. But ultimately, it's led to a great relationship where we try to be really diligent on our end to make sure it's like, hey, do they have everything that they need? And I think Stephen would be able to speak to that well, where we, are just always trying to stay in the loop of like, hey, how are things going? How is launch going? How can we help you, enable you, and make things better? But for governments in general, it's like, it really just will depend on your organization. Do you have an IT team that is enabled and excited and ready to jump into the scary world of AI? Okay, great. Do you not have that team? Okay, well, then maybe we can have some like engineers from our side that are able to support you and enable you, and even help you with that RFP process. And that's something that we're super willing to do, is be really as involved as you want us to be. Ultimately, there's going to be costs on our end, but it's like, we're willing to do a lot more to enable governments than we are, say, like just some random startup. Because some random startup, I don't know if they have any revenue or what's going to come in the door or if we're making a good investment. But like when I'm working with governments, I know that like they have taxpayer money and that this is really important to them, and that like saving costs has like a net good that it's contributing to their end users, and that if we're able to show them like what the technology that can do, the rest will follow. And so we're not going to play hardball. We're just going to like look and say like, hey, how can we help you? What do you want from us? And then we will engage with you accordingly, and show you, and show you what the options are.
Great. Okay, just note we have about 4 more minutes, so we probably have time for a couple more questions. If we don't get to your question, do not fret. We will get back up with you and get you some answers. Let's get on to the next one, though. How do you measure and validate the agent's responses to callers, specifically in terms of factual accuracy and grounding rate? Meaning, what proportion of responses are actually grounded in ingested knowledge in your RAG system?
Riggs, do you want to speak to the more technical aspect of that, or do you want me to just speak user end side?
Yeah, I mean, we have really good guardrails in place to understand like, okay, what can cause hallucination, what might cause like the AI to start speaking to issues that it shouldn't be speaking to. How do we make sure that it stays on track, that it keeps the user on track, that it's able to respond factually, that it's able to say, I don't know, which is a very hard thing for AI to say. And so we have a lot of guardrails and in place to help ensure that it's sticking to the prompt and what it is intended to do at the end of the day. Speaking to like the RAG system and how much ingested information there is, really that's set up in how your actual information, like that's really dependent on how your actual information is propped up on the back end. And so is it just like these plain text documents that you have? Then it's just going to be referencing that. Is it referencing a repository somewhere of living documents? Or is it, so it's going to be some sort of hopefully flywheel that exists, but there is some SOP in place of like the intake and the ingestion and the actual answers that it's giving and how it's able to respond. And so it's so kind of that's where I would leave it. But ultimately, we're set up to work with like a wide variety of setups, but we want to make sure that it's never hallucinating and that it's working in regulated environments. And government is no different. But we work with giant banks and giant organizations where health tech organizations where there's HIPAA compliance, whatever it might be. And so making sure that there's like good guardrails in place that are compliant and audit ready. That's a matter of just like taking what we've already built for other organizations or other government agencies and then applying it to your municipality.
Okay, and with the very little amount of time we have left, if you're through with that one, I've gotten several that were curious on ROI. So where are you seeing it in the shortest answer possible? Where are you seeing the biggest returns so far? Is it time saving, cost, service quality, or is it something else?
I would say that cost for sure is pretty huge. I mean, right now across 11 call centers, we've handled 7,490 calls at a rate of 35 cents per call. I mean, I think that that's uh, can't be compared to how much you would have to be paying if you had to add additional staff on top of the constraints that we already have with space physically. And so it wouldn't just be hiring more people, it would have to be hiring more people and adding more physical space that we just do not have at this time. And so I think that that's something really, really significant to consider, is that there is definitely not just a time savings, but a very direct correlational cost savings as well.
Yeah, and to speak to like the um, satisfaction, it's like, I think something that's not quantified a lot of the times is how important it is that we're actually answering questions for people and getting them the right responses and fulfilling requests. And what I've seen at like the most macro level, like the Social Security Administration, is that like last year they had 67 million calls and 27 million of them went unanswered completely. And so that's just like a statistic where it's like, okay, well, we're not actually serving the people that we need at the end of the day, even if we're trying to save money by having less like agents, like less humans that are on the other end. And what we're trying to do is like make sure that every single person gets a satisfactory answer to their question. And that's like a big, like, and we have evaluation criteria and ways to set that up where you're able to show that data to the people in your municipality that matter and say like, hey, we received 10,000 calls this last week, and here's how many of them went to hold, got answered, like fulfilled their request. How many times did this person have to call back? Whatever it might be, we're able to show that data and be like, hey, this is what you got out of it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you both. Okay, everybody. So at the end of the day, this is about making it easier for residents, right, to access services and to get answers more quickly. And Midland is doing exactly that. So thank you again, Briggs and Stephen. You were wonderful. And everybody else, thank you so much for your time. And have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.